Hello, everybody. Welcome to Championship Predictions, Week 6. Now, to briefly cover on last week's predictions, again, another week where it wasn't particularly great, but I ended up getting more points than Liam at least. Liam got 3, I got 4.
Here we go again.
I'm back in front. Unlucky. I'm going to beat you at the end of the season, for
No,
sure.
long way to go, and I'm just giving you a head start.
Oh, sure, sure. So if you didn't bottle like a 3 or 4 point lead a couple of weeks ago.
Like week 2, we'll leave it out.
Okay, shall we get on to also a quick brief player of the week last week, probably Philogene for sure. Scoring a
Well,
hat trick on,
there's no probably about it.
yeah,
He
definitely
scored 3,
Philogene.
nobody else did in the championship, so
So it was Philogene's day. Now, I wonder who we've got predicted as our player of the week. Find out later. First, we will cover week 6, and I will start off with Middlesbrough versus West Brom. Tough one to call this, because both are doing very well this season. West Brom just had a setback against Derby County at the Hawthorns, and I believe that's their first loss of the season. Middlesbrough also dropping points last time around against Preston North End, who've been very good at Deepdale so far. Now, how will both teams respond to their respective setbacks? Well, it's at the Riverside Stadium, and I think Middlesbrough will probably edge this one. I've gone for Middlesbrough 2, West Brom 1.
yeah, Middlesbrough lost their 100% record, didn't they, at Preston, but they remain unbeaten. West Brom do not remain unbeaten, losing to bogey side Derby once again. Um, that's also the first time West Brom haven't scored a goal this season. So there you go. Will that continue? Well, if you look at stats in the past, Middlesbrough have won the last 2 home games in the division, also the first 2 home games, 1-0. So I'm going for 3 for 3, 1-0 win.
I think there'll be a 1 goal difference, but I think there will be more goals in this game than just 1-0. Liam, do you want to take the floor for Birmingham versus Swansea?
Yeah, you can't really say either of these two sides are free scoring at the moment, can you? 10 goals scored between them. Birmingham haven't even scored for 3 games, and that's in all competitions. Swansea haven't lost since the opening day, and that was at the team we've just mentioned previously, Middlesbrough. Um, but from away from home, Swansea have only conceded 1 goal. Um, the issue is at St Andrews, it's going to be a hostile atmosphere for sure. Now Birmingham fans turn up in their numbers. Um, they still have optimism. Not a great start to the season, but as I said, still have optimism. But I just don't think it's going to work out this weekend. I've put Birmingham 1, Swansea 1.
So, Birmingham off the back of a defeat to Stoke at the Bet365 Stadium. So, they may feel hungry to get something here at home. Swansea last time around drew 2-2 with Hull at home. Maybe from a Swansea standpoint, that might be a pretty disappointing result on paper. Now, between Birmingham and Swansea, so Andrews is a very tough place to go to. But Swansea are decent on the road, as Liam just mentioned, so it's a tough one. I think I'm also going to go with a 1-1 draw.
Didn't take long, did
it? Brilliant start. Now, I will start with Leicester versus Coventry. So, last weekend, Leicester drew 2-2 away at the Kassam Stadium against Oxford. A very good result from Oxford, but from a Leicester standpoint, not very good on paper. Coventry drawing 1-1 at home to Norwich, but I don't know how they ended that with a draw. They should have won. Like, I think there was so many shots for Coventry and like barely any for Norwich, and it somehow ended as a draw. It nearly ended as a loss for Coventry. It needed a last-minute goal for Coventry to get something. A proper frustrating games for them at home. Now, can Coventry get past their woes from last week against Leicester? It's a difficult game at the King Power Stadium. Not going to be easy, but I think Coventry will get something. Not 3 points, 1 point. I'm going to say Leicester 1, Coventry 1.
Yeah, I can't say I caught the game at the Kassam last week, but from my reckoning, Leicester weren't great again away from home. At home, they've been pretty tidy. You can't really argue against that. They've won both home games, and they've scored 2 goals in both of them. Bit of a spoiler alert there. And Coventry seems like they're cursed. 7 goals scored against QPR the other week, and they haven't won since that. And Coventry did win last time they faced Leicester City. Leicester have actually won 3 out of the last 4 meetings, though, between the two, albeit 2 of those wins were in the early 2010s, so what does that matter? But as I mentioned, Leicester 2 goals 2 goals scored in both home games so far. Yeah, I sort of spoiled it. I think they'll score 2 again, and I don't see them keeping a clean sheet against a free-scoring Coventry side, but I do see them scraping a win. I've gone for 2-1.
Yay, we differed. We've differed on the outcome. That's going to be interesting. Now, Liam, do you want to take the floor for QPR versus Stoke?
Well, over the years, it seems like they both are, but QPR at the moment are like the masters of inconsistency. The home side, I've written down here, have scored goals in either end. That doesn't make sense, but I know what I mean. There's been a goal at either end in each of their opening 5 league games. Yeah, Stoke haven't kept up their 100% record, but they bounced back, didn't they, last week? And yeah, obviously losing 1 so far, Stoke. That was at home, so that means they've won 2 out of 2 away games, and now they're away in the capital. You just don't know with QPR right now, do you? I'm feeling a tight 1-1 draw here.
So, I feel like I'm going bold for my prediction. QPR obviously beat Wrexham 3-1 last week. Pretty good result from QPR's point of view. Stoke beating Birmingham last week. Continuing on a very good form. Stoke up there in the table. QPR around mid-table. Now, how I think this will fare, I'm going to be bold here. Now, on paper, in the league, it should seem like a Stoke win, but I'm going to go the other way. I'm going to go QPR 1, Stoke 0. So, a little bit bold from me, but we'll see what happens. I just think this is the kind of game that Stoke drops points in. So, now I shall get started on Blackburn versus Ipswich. Last weekend, Blackburn beat Watford 1-0 at Vicarage Road. Pretty good away win. But Ipswich, that performance against Sheffield United. Philogene hat-trick, 5-0. You would love that. Love that from Ipswich. Now, can Ipswich translate that into Ewood Park? I don't think it'll be free scoring. Blackburn are inconsistent. So I think it'll be close. I think Blackburn's going to put up a good fight. But I'm going for an Ipswich slender away win here. I'm going Blackburn 0, Ipswich 1.
Yeah, again, another inconsistent side. Blackburn lost all 3 home games, so that's in Cup as well. and they've conceded 2 in all of them. Yeah, I mean, I'll touch more on Sheffield United when we get to them, but I don't think they were all that terrible despite the scoreline. But Ipswich were just clinical enough, and I think that's what they've been missing so far this season. Ipswich just lacking in that killer edge, but they'll be on a high after that 5-0 victory, and maybe they'll be on a high after the fact that they won last time they visited Ewood Park, and I think they'll make it 2 for 2. I've gone 1-3.
Interesting. Now, I believe you take the floor for Derby County v Preston.
Yeah, with Derby, obviously they won at the Hawthorns, didn't they? But very, very unconvincing. It was just typical John Eustace, that was. John Eustace style performance. Smash and grab. And historically, Preston have frustrated Derby. Not necessarily in terms of results, in terms of performances. But they haven't won at Pride Park since Boxing Day 2020. So that's coming up to 5 years ago. But it's one of those games where you don't know what to expect because Derby haven't won at home yet, Preston haven't won away yet. But I think that'll change for someone, and I'm giving the slight edge to Derby here. I've gone 2-1.
Preston only one defeat so far. Last weekend, drawing 2-2 against the league leaders Middlesbrough, who was on a 100% record. Very good performance. Preston's been very tidy, difficult to beat, only losing to Portsmouth. Derby, mixed start. I believe it's 2 losses, 2 draws and 1 win. And a pretty good result at the Hawthorns. So, Derby also has the capability of beating sides who are expected to be up there. Now, how I approach this one, it's going to be close. I think this will be a 1-goal advantage either way. But the side I'm picking is Derby. I'm going to go with 2-1 for Derby. Now, quickly moving on to Hull versus Southampton. Last week, Hull drew 2-2 against Swansea away. A decent performance on paper. Southampton, they drew 0-0 against their arch rivals Portsmouth. A pretty poor result for them on paper. I think Southampton's been very unconvincing so far under Will Still, and Hull have been inconsistent. Now, this is at Hull, because I feel like at any moment Southampton's going to click and they're going to get going. But with Hull, they do have the capability in there to play well against sides who are up the top. Now, I'm looking at this, and I'm very torn. Personally, I think Southampton edges this one. I'm going to go Hull 1, Southampton 2.
Yeah, they're not looking very good, are they, right now, Southampton? Dare I say concerning? I think it's still too early in the season to say that. But yeah, they were outplayed on home turf against their rivals and were lucky to draw 0-0 in the end. Sure, they stepped up in the second half, but they just lacked any sort of goal threat. And yeah, they haven't won away yet. And Hull at Hull it's a big chance for Southampton to get up and running on the road. But do we think Hull's home woes are set to continue? You do. Well, they've conceded 5 goals in their 2 home matches so far. And yeah, as I mentioned, will Hull's woes at home continue? You know what? I feel like this is the game for both sides to put things right. And I've actually gone for Hull to beat Southampton by 2-0.
Ooh. That's bold. I like it. It could well happen, you know. I mean, Southampton's been pretty poor so far, so they need to get moving quickly. Otherwise, I think we'll still be under a heap of pressure. Now, I believe you take the floor for Norwich versus Wrexham.
It's a horrid fixture, this one, because it could go any which way. Norwich historically goals, 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 goals from everywhere and anywhere. They just never look like they're going to stop. But then you could also argue that with Wrexham. Sure, not so much so far this season, even though they've scored a fair amount still. But obviously, I think it was their first game of the season when in League Two, and they scored about 5 goals. Conceded the same amount as well, I think. So yeah, they're known for scoring goals as well, Wrexham. So I'm really struggling to work out what to say for this one, because Norwich are rubbish at home at the moment, aren't they? There's no other way to put
Yes.
it.
I believe they've lost both so far
They
at home.
have, yes. And Wrexham have only won once in their first 5 games, but it came away from home. So is that something to help them in any way? I'm not too sure. I'm really not. Fun fact for you though, it's only the 10th competitive you know what I'm trying to say. 10th competitive meeting between the two sides. Norwich have won 8 of those 10, and they drew 1. So 1 win for Wrexham against Norwich in their history. I think Norwich are going to make it 9 out of 11, and I'm going to say 2-1 to the home side.
Yeah, last weekend, Norwich drew against Coventry, somehow got that point, defended well. Wrexham, that poor defeat at home to QPR, they're very poor on paper, and they both, I feel like both would probably want 3 points out of this. Now, Norwich has been poor at Carrow Road so far, as I mentioned previously, losing both games, and Wrexham's only win of the season was at Millwall, away from home. Now, this one, Norwich are going to click into gear eventually, aren't they? And I think this is the game they will. I'm going to go for 3-1 to Norwich. Now, quickly moving on to Portsmouth v Sheffield Wednesday. Last weekend for Portsmouth, a good result on paper against their rivals, but they may be kicking themselves that they didn't win that game, because they certainly had their chances and didn't take them. Sheffield Wednesday, another 3-0 defeat at home. It's not looking good for Sheffield Wednesday, to say the least. Sheffield Wednesday goes to a tricky Fratton Park. But Portsmouth, when they've scored, they've only scored once. And I feel like this is a game that Portsmouth need to score more than once, because I feel like they're not taking their chances, and Sheffield Wednesday have shown on occasions that they can. Now, this one, I think it'll be trickier for Portsmouth than they'd expect. But I'm going to go with a comfortable home win, 2-0.
Yeah, they've had a solid start to the season, Portsmouth. They've only lost once in the first 5, and that was their first home game of the season. So, Fratton Park not looking quite like the fortress we know it is just yet, but I'm sure that will change. Wednesday, only 1 point registered. But, yeah, as you mentioned, Pompey not clinical enough, really. So you fear it could be a banana skin for the home side, and I think Wednesday are capable of scoring. Just outscoring teams, I think, is the major issue. But yeah, as mentioned, Pompey not clinical enough thus far, but from what I've seen of them so far, I feel like it's looking likely that sooner rather than later they will absolutely demolish a team. And you know what? With Wednesday's current state, I think it's going to be this weekend. I've actually gone for a 4-0 home win.
Wow. Pretty bold, considering Portsmouth hasn't scored more than one goal so far
I
this season.
don't know what it
So
is, but I just feel like there's sooner rather than later they're due to batter someone, and I just feel like with the state Sheffield Wednesday are in, I feel like it's going to be this weekend.
I just personally think that Sheffield Wednesday can show up and get the odd goal. I just think, obviously, showing that result at Wrexham came out of nowhere, and I just think it will be trickier than some people will say. So, quickly moving on, it's Sheffield United versus Charlton. Liam, do you want to take the floor for that one?
Ladies and gentlemen, Chris Wilder is back at Bramall Lane, replacing Ruben Sellers, who lost 5 out of 5, technically 6 out of 6 if you count the cup. Either way, it's not good. Not good at all. So, with Wilder back in the dugout, you just feel like it's written in the stars, I guess, for them to win. But Charlton are no turnovers, are they? A good start, sort of, I mentioned last week, a good start, what looked like a good start anyway, sort of depleted a little bit. That draw against Millwall last weekend, I feel like will hurt them, leading up until the 91st minute. And yeah, back to Sheffield United though. At Portman Road on the Friday night game, on the front foot they were relatively decent. They could have maybe gone 1-up quite early into that, but it's the defence Wilder needs to fix, because that is not good enough if you're a Sheffield United supporter and you want to see your team in the top 6 again. Absolutely, the biggest issue is that back line. For whatever reason, my gut says 2-2. I think I'm just going to play it safe and say 2-1 to Sheffield.
Okay, well, Sheffield United, obviously, like you said, Wilder back. Charlton, inconsistent so far in terms of results. On paper, this should be a pretty comfortable win for Sheffield United, but I just don't think they're going to click into gear immediately. I think I've seen the script before, and this will probably be like 4-0 Sheffield United in the end, but I've seen the script before, and it's just a kind of new game where there's a new manager against, the side that's the favourite need to get into gear. They get like a disappointing result early on, and I think this will be a disappointing result. I'm going to go Sheffield United 1, Charlton 1. I think it'll be a draw, personally.
Yeah, I don't necessarily disagree. It's just, we all know what Chris Wilder's about. He'll find a tune out of the blades one way or another. So I feel like I'm sort of playing for points rather than playing for my own predictions with my one.
Yeah, they need points for sure, because they haven't even got a single one yet.
Yeah, I need points as well. I'm losing again.
Well, if Sheffield United could lend you their points, you'd still be on 19.
Yeah, brilliant.
So, moving on to Bristol City v Oxford, I believe I take the floor for this one. Bristol City last weekend, 3-0 win at Sheffield Wednesday, and they are third in the table, so they're doing very well. Oxford, 2 points so far in the season, 22nd in the table. They need to get a win soon. They've looked encouraging recently, especially with a good result against Leicester. So they certainly have capability, but it's away from home, and I don't know about Oxford away from home. I just think at Ashton Gate, I just think Bristol City are too strong there. I'm gonna go Bristol City 2, Oxford 0.
Yeah, I'm worried for Oxford, to be honest. Gary Rowett's side not looking very good defensively at the moment, which is a weird thing to say based on Rowett's history. Especially at Millwall. Um, Obviously, with Birmingham and Derby, and even Burton, his setups were very defensive focused. But something's just not working at the moment for Oxford, and as I mentioned, defensively not convincing right now. And against a Bristol City side at Ashton Gate this weekend, they've scored 12 goals in 5 games. My dog's barking again. She's always trying to get into the video. Um, yeah, they've scored 12 in 5, and it's probably going to add up a few after what is it, Sunday 3 o'clock kickoff, which is strange. Yeah, I'm worried for Oxford for this one. I've gone 3-0 City.
So we both agree on the outcome, but not the scoreline. So I believe we are now at the Monday night game. For some reason, it's on a Monday. Now, Liam, take the floor for Millwall versus Watford.
Sometimes I give Watford the benefit of the doubt, but I don't know how long I can do that for. And to be honest, right now I'm feeling like they're going to continue slipping down the table before they head back up. They've only scored, well, both sides have only scored 9 between them in 5 games, and between them they've conceded 13. Millwall have lost both home games so far to Middlesbrough and Wrexham. Their fans will do what they can to ensure their players keep their heads held high, and they don't make it 3 defeats from 3. It's a tough one really, because as I said, Watford are very hit and miss, and Millwall haven't won at home. But I think on the Monday night it's going to change. I've gone for a very tight 1-0 home win.
Yeah, so last weekend Millwall scored very late on against Charlton to get a point, and Watford lost 1-0 at home to Blackburn Rovers. Now, both, obviously, they need a win. I think both are in the bottom half. So both teams will be looking at this and thinking, this is our chance to rise up the table. I look at this, it's at the Den. 2 losses, as you mentioned, for Millwall at the Den. Watford may look at that and think, you know what, we could upset them here. But I don't think either team will emerge victorious from this one. I'm going to go Millwall 1, Watford 1. Now, shall we cover our player of the week? Liam, you go first. Who is your prediction?
So last week I predicted Nathan Broadhead. That didn't go very well. I mentioned a certain somebody returning to the dugout, and last season his top scorer was Tyrese Campbell, and I think it just makes sense this weekend, judging by my prediction as well. I am saying Tyrese Campbell of Sheffield United. I would like to give a few honourable mentions as well. Obviously, first and foremost, Jaden Philogene. Hat-trick last weekend against Sheffield United. That can't be ignored. Josh Sargent, top goal scorer. Scott Twine isn't far off either. And he made his debut at the Hawthorns for Derby. Patrick Agyemang came on and was a handful for the West Brom defence, who have been so solid. So I think he's also one to look out for this weekend.
So you actually mentioned the player I chose as player of the week. I think this is a game, Norwich versus Wrexham for Josh Sargent. I think it screams at least 1 or 2 goals for Josh Sargent in this, and I think he'll end up being the player of the week. Obviously, yeah, there's a lot of honourable mention, like you said. Philogene last week, 3 goals, but I don't think that will continue into this week. Meanwhile, I just think Josh Sargent so far has been a steady Eddie, and I think this is a game where he will turn up again. So I've picked Josh Sargent as my player of the week. So I believe that wraps up our week 6 predictions. I hope you've enjoyed, and we will see you for week 7. It's goodbye from me.
Bye bye. See you next week.
See you next week. Bye bye.